Hey guys, how's it going? So my name is Daniel Jones, or my online pseudonym is actually the Aspie World, which is quite interesting because that name came around by accident. But I'll get into that a little bit later on. I'm a international best-selling author. I have an award-winning YouTube channel, and I actually do keynote talks all over the world. And I help consult with governments to help them advocate for autism help, support, and differences within society, like looking at the autism employment gap in basically the Western Hemisphere, and also working with healthcare professionals here in the UK and abroad to bring about change and development and understanding of autism and ADHD within those medical professional communities. I have been featured in Google. I've worked with MIT, the National Autistic Society here in the UK, VidCon in America, and CNN Business, talking about how disabilities can, or how a disabled person can create a disability kind of employment opportunity for themselves. So like how do you market yourself as a business owner and things like that. So I wanted to go over kind of like all those things from my journey today of like how I got started, where I, what were some of the challenges that I faced, how I overcame those challenges, what is my attitude towards work, life, everything in between, and where I'm headed. And one of the most interesting things I'll start with is that I have a diagnosis of autism, ADHD, OCD, dyslexia, and other small pieces like pathological demand avoidance, anxiety, stress, depression, and a whole host of other kind of things like alexithymia and sensory processing disorder that kind of become wrapped up within the larger diagnosis of autism. And how I went 26 years without being diagnosed is kind of an interesting concept. So I wasn't diagnosed officially until I was 26 years old. So back in 2013, I was diagnosed officially with Asperger's syndrome. And Asperger's syndrome was the original nomenclature given to autistic individuals who had low support needs, but struggled in certain areas or specific areas, which is quite interesting. Now, before then, so from like 1986, when I was born, to 2013, you're thinking, Dan, what on earth is going on here? And one of the most interesting things was it was a difficult time period because I was in Wales, which is, North Wales, which is North United Kingdom, close to Dublin, but more rural Wales, right? So we were in a small town off an island on another island, right? 1980s, 1990s, very difficult. So my parents knew that there was something amiss, with their son, and Dan, there's something not quite right here. His scholastic ability or his educational ability isn't the same as my other two children, because I'm the youngest of three, right? And so they took me to see some psychiatrists and doctors, and they didn't have a clue. Not to mention they weren't trained in autism. They had no idea what autism was back then over here in Wales. It was quite rural, right? So we're quite a distance away from any kind of groundbreaking studies that were coming out of the United States on autism back in 1989, maybe 1991. So that being said, I kind of flew under the radar on the medical side of things, but at school I took an absolute beating. It was kind of like every day was a struggle. When I was a kid, going to school was horrendous. Like it felt like, and I document this in my book. So I've got a book out called Autism for Adults, and you can get it from www.autismforadults.com. And one of the things I wrote in that book is I compare it to, there's a movie called Beetlejuice, right, with Michael Keaton and Winona Ryder in it. And in that movie, these two people, the main actors die, right, and they come back as ghosts and they go to their house. But they try to leave their house. And when they open the door to the house, the world outside is chaotic. It's like a sandstorm, and there's these huge like snakes just like trying to eat them and stuff. It's all chaotic. It's crazy. That was the experience of me going outside of my house to school, right? It was horrible. It was like, can I get from school to my house without melting down? The answer was no. I was terrified. I didn't want to leave the house. And so my parents thought I had agoraphobia, and they tried all kinds of stuff. And at the end of the day, all I wanted was just sensory deprivation for a little bit to regulate myself, right? And so that was difficult. And that continued on. School felt like a living hell, unfortunately. Then I got to secondary school, and something quite remarkable happened. My parents lost, when I was 11 years old, we become homeless. My parents lost our house. We lost our business. We lost absolutely everything we own. And that was a difficult time in my life, being an autistic person who had no safe place to go. My bedroom and my things were my safe space, but I didn't have a bed or a bedroom or a house to put them in. when I was 11. So we were put into social accommodation, where the government here in the UK puts you into like a social accommodation, which is like a temporary thing. And the social accommodation they put us into was, funny enough, back to back with the high school that I was about to attend. And so where I couldn't go from my house to the school because it was too overwhelming, and now I had this opportunity to gain a little bit of independence, right, or a bit of control in my life, where not literally, and when I say it was back to back, I literally, my parents' house, the wall was the conjoining wall between the school. So the school was one side and my parents' house was the other side. So I can go to the garden, jump over the wall, and I was in the school, which is pretty amazing. So it allowed me to develop some independence in moving forward as an autistic person wanting to gain independence. So I was able to go to high school, to and from high school on my own, come back at lunchtime, which was great. This really developed my independent skills, which gave me ample amounts of confidence, right? Because I was like, wow, I can do this. I can do anything, right? So giving a little bit can really increase that potential, or widen the space of your space of reality. Now, moving on from high school, I went to college, and at college, or technical college here in the UK, between 16 and 18, it was difficult because I had no qualifications leaving high school, because I had no support in high school. And so I did performing arts, because I'm a self-taught multi-musician. I play very many instruments. I play roughly about 8 instruments on kind of like my default, which is like bass guitar, drums, guitar, violin, piano, cello, that kind of stuff, banjos, banjolettes, ukuleles. But in terms of college, I decided that I would do performing arts, because performing arts is kind of like one of my, I just love kind of entertaining and being kind of, part of a group of people who are entertaining, because it was really good. It's expressive art at the end of the day. So I did that, and it allowed me again to build confidence. So I'd gone from being this quite a shy kid to being somewhat confident within my younger teen years, which is really interesting. Now, between then and my university degree, there was a lot of time. So I actually came out of college because I was touring with a band playing music all over the place, and I was in the United States on the East Coast doing music, and so then I came back to reality, and I was like, oh my goodness, like I have to get a job, and so I was getting jobs here, there, and everywhere, and this is how my diagnosis happened, right? So by the time I was 26, what was happening is I was starting a job, getting completely stressed out, being medicated, having severe depression and stress, and then leaving that job. And then trying to get another job, and the same thing happened. This pattern kept repeating. And so one day I got a job with an American healthcare company, and I was doing like an administrative role, working with their reconciliation files. So I loved it. I was working with numbers. I was working with different types of files. And with this came the ability to just be comfortable around numbers. And I love numbers, and I love kind of like mathematics and stuff like that. So I had this awesome time just like constantly just playing with numbers. And I did that job for a while. But what was interesting is the more I was exposed to people around me, the more demand I had, and the less able to focus and function I was. So again, back to medication, back to not being able to attend work, really difficult. In the final job I had, and this is where it gets really super interesting, I was working for a multimedia company, and we were creating multimedia packages for car dealerships, loyalty programs. And that was a really cool job. I liked the people. When I first started there was about 5 people working in the entire company. But by the time I parted from the company, there was about 200 people in there. So, it was only a space of about 3 or 4 years. So it expanded rapidly, which was difficult, because I go from being in an office, this size with like 4 dudes in it, to moving offices to a different place. And this is what actually happened to me. I go on vacation, and I come back, and my office is not just like being moved around. They've actually moved offices. They went from being in one small space to being in a huge space, but also they'd moved my desk. Now, I'd been going to the same desk every day for the past 4 years, right? And then all of a sudden they moved my desk when I was on vacation. I came back in, freaked out, had a crazy meltdown right in the office. And then they were like, took me out, took me home, and were like, dude, you need to kind of get some therapy, and we'll sort it out. So I went to see a therapist. And during my time with the therapist, they were like, are you on the autism spectrum? And I was like, I don't even know what that means. I knew nothing about autism at this moment in time, right? This is quite profound, because I'd always felt, isolated from the world. And like I put in my book, I felt all by myself in a crowded room. There's lots going on, yet I'm completely disconnected from it. I felt like my experience of the world up until this point, because I didn't understand what was going on, it felt like I was a full-grown adult in a world full of toddlers, and I couldn't speak their language. Oh my goodness, like these people are just intellectually unadvanced, right? They can't get to my level, because being an intellect, you're thriving for those people to have those connections, right? And if you don't have those connections, if you can't learn from other people, if you can't put yourself into people who can have big, high conversations, it starts to become really, really bad. And you just want to socially deprivate. You want to go away from everybody, and it's just bad. So I get to therapy, and they say, okay, well, I'm going to send you for an autism assessment, which is really interesting, because my partner at the time's mother was going through. She was a mental health nurse and doing a degree in mental health studies and different things. And so she said to me, "Are you on the autism spectrum?" I said, "I don't know." It's funny you should mention that, because my therapist asked the same question, and I have nothing, I have no idea what autism is at this moment in time in my life. So, where do I go from here? So. We go get the assessment done, and then the assessor was like, "Yeah, you have what I call Asperger syndrome and ADHD. I'm going to refer you to somebody else for therapy and all this kind of stuff." I was like, oh, "Okay, cool." So then I come home, right? I'm like a 26-year-old dude. I'm struggling with my life. Can't go to work. Still living with my parents, because I can't. My executive function is abysmal. Like, I can't do washing. I couldn't put laundry on. Couldn't make food, couldn't regulate myself. It's just ridiculous stuff. And I had a girlfriend, and all those things that any other kind of typical male wants, but unable to achieve these things. And when I got this diagnosis of autism, it was kind of like okay, well, now I've got something to go on, right? So I come home and I go on YouTube, and I'm like, autism, and this is going back to 2013. Nothing. YouTube had no videos about autism and autistic individuals I could relate to. There was nothing. There was articles on the internet and blogs, but because I'm dyslexic, like those weren't going to happen for me. So I was like, oh shoot, okay. So then I had this, like, almost like a cognition, right? I was like, I've gone 26 years surviving, not knowing what on earth's going on, and now I realize I'm autistic. Maybe, just maybe, I have something I could share to help other people who may be in my position where I was before I was diagnosed. So then I'd started the Aspie World again, and this is how I got started. When I went onto YouTube to find out if there was any information, I found nothing. And the one or two videos I did find were very depressing. They were badly lit, they were bad audio, really rubbish quality, and the information was just sucked. It was like a guy just talking about a weighted vest that his dad gave him because he worked in like an X-ray department, right? And I was like, okay, well, these videos suck. Like, nobody can gain from this. And I've had this ever since I was a kid. I've had this like inherent kind of like almost like a passion, a mission from God to change the world. I don't know why. Like, I have no idea why. I just had this like thing inside me. Like, I want to change the world. I feel like I need to be bigger than ever. Like I had to do something spectacular or amazing. I've had this like burning fire in my belly. Like, I just, ugh. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll do it. Like, I'll put my own video out. Like, I've done 26 years. Like, I don't know what I'm talking about. Like, not to these guys, but I'll do a good go. So I had an iPad, and I just put the iPad up, and I recorded a video of me. And it's bad. If you go on my YouTube channel and go to my first ever video from like 2013, I think it was like June 2013, June 13th, 2013, or June 23rd. Absolutely terrible. It's like it's got way over 1 million views, and it's a terrible video, badly lit. Camera's not a camera, it's an iPad. And I'm not even looking at the camera, because at this point, I hadn't been able to practice looking at a camera and talking to a camera, because I'd never done this before. This is the first time I've ever done anything like this. So I did it, and something magical kind of happened. I left it alone for like 2 months. I didn't think anything of it. And I came back to the account, and I opened it up, and thousands of people had subscribed to this channel. And I didn't know what this meant at the time. I was like, holy smokes. And then not only did they subscribe, they'd asked, Dan, can you do more? Dan, what about this? Dan, what about that? I'm autistic as well. I feel you. I feel the same thing. I have the same issues. And I was like, holy, whoa. Okay, so I took a bunch of their ideas that they asked me to talk about, and I just spoke about them. And then it cascaded, right? That it cascaded so much that then fast forward into after I realized I was autistic, and I had some kind of support now in place from like the government and my kind of like home life. Like, my parents knew like I was autistic. I wasn't just being kind of awkward and that kind of thing. I really knew who I was. I took control of myself. One of the things I always wanted to do when I was a kid, I wanted to be a scientist. Like, I always wanted to be a scientist, right? So, but I never had the qualifications or the support to be one. And so I was like, do you know, I can't go to. My doctor basically, when I was diagnosed autistic, they said, look, for your mental capacity and your brain to survive, you can't really work more than 2 days a week within an office setting. And I thought, oh my goodness, like, how am I supposed to sustain a life? You know what I mean? Working 2 days a week, very, very difficult, you know, and the economy is always rubbish. So I was like, maybe I need to get skilled. So I went back to university and I got a degree in chemistry, a bachelor's degree in chemistry, which, unbeknown to me, apparently is one of the most difficult degrees to get. I don't know. I mean, something did happen though. The first day we were there, when we were in the auditorium, and the professor was behind the lectern, and he said, "Look to your left, look to your right." He said, "One of those people won't be there next year," and that will continue every year until you graduate. And I thought, that's baloney. And like, sure as heck, man. You know, it was a tough degree, I think, you know, for a lot of people. Like, but being a mature student, going back, you know, my 20s, and just like, you know, thinking, okay, well, I'll just do what I can. You know, like, it's no biggie. You know, I love this subject, and chemistry was great, and I did all the qualifying markers to get back into university, and I did all those things. And so now I'm a qualified chemist, you know, like I have a degree in chemistry, and I will be doing a PhD eventually. I was going to do the PhD afterwards, but they pulled down the department due to funding from this whole Brexit thing that happened, and the EU funding fell through, and the whole thing. Anyway, so there I am. I'm a scientist now, and this was really profound because I'd gone all of my life through academia and experiencing scholastics without help, without support. And now here I am in a university setting, in the most difficult subject you could probably take in university. And I had support in place, and the support was absolutely profound. A few things happened, and I'm going to share those right now. And the first one was I was able to record audio lectures using my mobile phone. The other thing was that when the slides came on the screen, I could take a screenshot on my phone that I could then refer to when I got back home listening to the recording. Because when I was live in the lectures, watching the lecturer, I couldn't really understand what they were saying in real time because it was taking a while for it to process. But obtaining the lecture that I'd recorded, going home and listening to it, I could teach myself all about the subject that was happening, you know, at that time. So I was like, dude, this is awesome. And that's how I got my degree. And just for really interesting context here, I did my dissertation, my third year. I did my dissertation on molecular symmetry and group theory, which is quite a hard concept for a lot of people to understand because it's like moving objects in 3D space in their mind. And so I built a teaching tool to teach people this specific subject in Minecraft, which is a very popular game owned by Microsoft. And I built these huge chemistry models, and it's completely open source. And but Microsoft were really interested in buying my chemistry kit, so maybe one day. So that was kind of like my university kind of journey, but it really opened up my eyes and thinking like, wow, you know, two things that really made me think about the idea of autistic individuals and how they learn versus other people. And the first thing I should say is that autistic individuals will note when they come across a word they do not understand, they will research and understand that word, like, so they can understand the full context of the article they're reading. Whereas the average person will come across a word they don't understand, make up what it sounds like in their head, and go past it. But by doing this, you don't understand the context in which it's being used. So that's the first downfall of scholastic education for neurotypical people. And the second is the absence of mass. When neurotypical people are learning about engineering, and somebody shows them a slide on the board, you know, they're just like, okay, I get it, but where's the engine in front of me? You know, I need something tangible to look at. That's called the mass part, right? So autistic people love tangibility and collect mass. That's why we collect things, right? Because we're learning through the presence of mass. Now, when I was doing my degree, I actually bought a Buckminster Fullerene, like a C60 carbon ball, the Bucky ball, they call it. And I was able to use that and take the mods apart and kind of, you know, figure out how different molecules go together, and, you know, you kind of dot line diagrams and all those kind of skeletal structures. And it was great because this taught me a lot about learning, and that carried with me for the rest of my life up until now. And this is how I teach people. You know, if you're struggling, then there's two things. You need to understand what you're reading or what you're digesting, and you need to have mass. The presence of mass is so important. When you can combine those two together, you'll fly, you'll beam like the sun, and everything will become easy. So that's how I got to a point in my life where I was like, come out of university, and I had this YouTube channel, and I didn't know what to do. Literally, the day I finished my last university exam, I hopped on a train and I went to London for 10 days with YouTube. So YouTube, I won a competition called or it's an award. It wasn't really a competition. It was an award called YouTube Next Up. And what they do is they take channels between 10,000 and 100,000 and all over the UK, and they pick the best 10. And then they say, you guys are going to be the future of YouTube. We're going to help supercharge our channels, and we're going to give you some money to buy equipment, which is cool because, my equipment was like sellotape together. It wasn't the best. I didn't have much money. I'd come out of university, and nobody has money in university.